was an inspiration to others. There was Chief Peter Yellowquill of the Anishinaabe or Ojibwe Nation in Manitoba, and some of the Mohawk confederacies in eastern Canada have all endorsed this investigation and the allowing the tribunal to come onto their territory and conduct forensics and other investigations. We have the support of survivors groups in Ireland, especially. 3 different survivors organizations: Religious Abuse Truth and Temple More Forgotten Victims. These are all survivors of tortures in Catholic boarding schools there. Also, Eurostate, which is a federation of indigenous nations in Europe comprising indigenous peoples such as the Sami of Finland, the Celtic people, the Basques in Spain. They've all endorsed what they see as not only a support of other native people, but a way to reassert the sovereign identity of those different nations, recognizing that the only reason these crimes could happen is because of false jurisdictions that have been imposed on these traditional nations. So and also, to give you another example, there's some of the indigenous groups in Asia, including the Aka people of Thailand, have also endorsed what we're doing. We work with the Aka Heritage Foundation, which helps fight the child trafficking in Thailand, which is exploiting primarily the Aka native children. We've documented the child trafficking networks between Thailand and Vancouver and the west coast of America, which involve actually some from modern-day church groups that are running the equivalent of Indian residential schools in Thailand now. So, this shows you how this is an international network, and we hope to bring all of these issues to the fore when we start holding our tribunal events.
Right. I'm also looking here at the events which will happen. You're calling it a Second Reformation, and that is starting on Sunday, October 30th, outside of the Vatican. And perhaps you could talk more about that, what its purpose is, and what you hope it will lead to.
Well, kind of in a very basic sense, Alfred, we realize that this is not just about a legal process or even a political movement, which it is, but it's also a spiritual battle, and we look to spiritual transformation. We're dealing with an institution which historically has violated and destroyed the foundational teachings of Christianity. And so we hope to appeal to Christians and Catholics to say it's time to not simply reform, but overturn these institutions and start again. A clear example of that is, which is also mentioned in that posting on the website, ITCCS website, is we've discovered through our research that the Vatican has secret agreements with over 73 nations in the world, siphoning off billions of dollars of tax money every year to the Vatican. To the Vatican Bank. And to give you an example, one example that we've documented is in Spain alone in 2010, 262 million euros were given to the Vatican, either directly or by subsidizing Catholic charities and businesses. So we're talking over $250 million from one country alone, taken from people's tax money and just simply handed to what really amounts to a criminal organization. And so the only way that can change is if people within those churches take them back and say, we don't want these church bodies to do these crimes anymore. We don't think that Christian churches should be big corporations that exploit and destroy children's lives and then get away with it under the law. We want that the churches to be brought under not only a legal system where the church is accountable and priests are accountable for their crimes, but in a basic sense, we want to see these churches return to their basic spiritual roots. And that's part of the appeal we're making to Christians everywhere to start doing that, because they're the only ones who can make this happen.
What sort of a future do you see for institutions like the Catholic Church?
Well, I don't really see much of a future for it, frankly, because the discontent you see everywhere. One example is in Austria alone last year, 38,000 people left the Roman Catholic Church, which was a 200% increase over a decade before. there's disenchantment everywhere, and as people are completely alienated from these false churches. And so I think we're seeing a decay and destruction of these institutions that are really responsible for, when you look at it, even numerically, the greatest crimes in human history, beginning with the destruction of millions of indigenous people all over the world in the name of Christ. So fortunately, a trend I see happening, including in the Catholic Church, is people are localizing their religions. I know, for example, of Catholic priests in Quebec who recently have left, cut off ties with the Vatican, and simply said that their congregations will operate as independent Catholic churches without any ties to Rome. So, the reason we called it a Second Reformation is we're seeing, again, what happened during the 16th century, begun by Martin Luther, but many others, simply saying, we are not part of Rome anymore. We are establishing our own congregations to follow the teachings of Christ, and we're not going to be part of these big corporate entities, which are really betraying, the calling of Christians and betraying their basic faith. So this is really part of a whole global transformation I see going on.
Right. Perhaps on a even a tougher note, what do you see as the future specifically of Queen Elizabeth Windsor and the Windsor monarchy in the UK?
Well, I think they're in a pretty desperate state themselves, Alfred. Even the most recent poll in Canada about 2 years ago showed that, despite all the hoopla over the coming visit of Prince Andrew and Princess Kate to Canada, over 62% of Canadians are in favor of dissolving all ties to the monarchy and becoming a republic. I mean, that's nearly two-thirds of Canadians want a republic. And in England as well, we have about 45% of Britons who are quite disenchanted with the monarchy. I think that's one of the reasons that Kate and Andrew are coming to Canada.
Kate and William.
Kate and William, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
They're coming to Canada to put a new kind of face on the monarchy. There's a lot, when I was in England, there was a lot of fun being poked at Charles and Camilla all the time. I mean, as kind of the attitude is they're the ones who are going to inherit the throne. We need a sexier image. We need some younger people who are more in touch with things going on in the world. That's definitely the motivation, and it's an act of desperation because they know how alienated the monarchy is from even people in England who are traditionally supporters of it. So, I think these are all signs of really fundamental changes happening.
Well, here we have a monarchy that is owned by, very, very well documented sources. A new book that came out on ownership of the world's land, and that the world's largest landowner owns 26% of the surface land on the planet, mm-hmm. and is one of the largest owners of uranium resources on the planet. Uranium resources are essentially just through nuclear power plants and depleted uranium weapons are essentially destroying the genome of all living things and the ecology of the planet, and that's traced directly to the ownership of the Windsors.
That's right, and we're talking the fiction called The Crown. The Crown land in England, in Canada, is simply the theft of the land, not only from Indigenous people but all Canadians. And to give you an example of what you're talking about, Camco, it's the largest uranium company in the world, based in Saskatchewan. It has large shares controlled by top people in the Liberal Party, like Bob Rae, and the Power Corporation that he married into, the Desmarais family, have direct ties to Maurice Strong and the monarchy of England. They're profiting, as you mentioned, off depleted uranium, the destruction of native communities all over northern Saskatchewan by uranium tailings that they dump on native land. The cancer rate in northern Saskatchewan is about 200 times the national average because of these actions. And this is a war at home that's being conducted, again, because of the complicity of the Crown of England. And it's time that Canadians say, okay, we're going to take back our land. We're disavowing the so-called, right of the Crown to own this land, and we need to simply do what Native people are doing and saying, enough is enough. We're going to take back our country.
Now, are some of these issues regarding uranium mining and the export of